Hey guys, welcome to another episode of American Signature Podcast. Here I am, your host, Kenny Corder. Today I got the founder of ShotKam himself, David Stewart, with me. How you doing, David?
I'm doing very well, Kenny.
Nice to meet you, buddy. Is this your first podcast you've been on?
No, I've done other podcasts,
Yeah.
mostly audio only. Some of the clay shooters will know podcasts like Behind the Break or whatever, but it was audio only.
Okay, so it's your first video podcast.
Yes, it is.
Well, good deal. At least a lot of people talk to me about my accident because I got a little bit of one, but you definitely got one. And then Emily, your daughter, we done a podcast with her, and she kind of gave us your background a little bit real quick. But tell us where you're from and how you come here.
All right. Well, see, as far as I'm concerned, you've got the accent and I don't. But,
That's all right. I'll take it.
yeah. So no, I came over here in 1988. So I grew up in Scotland. I grew up on a farm in Scotland. So the earliest shooting I did was, my dad handing me a shotgun and telling me to go out and shoot the rabbits and pigeons that were destroying the crops. So it was my introduction. In fact, it's a little bit of a funny story. My dad wasn't big into shooting. As far as he's concerned, you shot things to eat and you shot things to scare them off the crops. So he gave me a double-barreled shotgun. We only had one double-barreled shotgun. It was a hammer gun. He handed it to me, and of course it had two triggers. And he said, "Okay, take a shot at that post." I think it was about 8 at the time. Well, if you hand an 8-year-old a gun with two triggers, you assume you put one, first finger on the front trigger and second finger on the back trigger, and then you control which one you pull by which finger. Well, obviously, when you pull the first trigger, the gun goes bang, and the recoil makes the second one. So both barrels went off, and I ended up literally on my backside. So that was my introduction to shotgun shooting. But so I grew up there on a farm, did engineering, electronic engineering, got into initially the defense industry, worked on guidance systems, which we sold to the American Air Force. The first systems went on F-18 planes.
Yeah.
It was I loved it. I happened to get in various projects where I was probably over my head, but I got to work on really interesting projects and saw some interesting stuff. And this is kind of off topic, but when you think of the quality of the equipment that the American forces have, I remember, in the sort of Cold War days, we were worried about the fact that the Russians had, 10 tanks for every one we had. And when you actually work in the defense industry and you realize the quality of, the Western or NATO forces, the quality of our equipment, it's just stunning. And that's what we saw in the Iraq War was, one Abrams tank could take out, could be traveling at 70 miles an hour and take out 30, Russian-built tanks and never get touched. And that was interesting for me back then. In fact, we actually captured some optical sites. It was the Israelis captured some equipment, and we looked at the optical equipment, and the reality was your local optician could make better quality optics than these tank sites were using. So wow. That was my stint in the defense industry, and then got into the computer business. Scottish hard drive company, came over to Boca Raton, Florida, which is where ShotKam is still based. And in Boca, the first personal computers were made by IBM. So okay. This was kind of like a technology center. So that's what brought me over here. Came over for 1 year with my Scottish wife, which I'm really glad because I couldn't afford these American wives that you guys have. But just fell in love with the place, and got a green card, became a citizen, and truly do love it. And back in 2011, I was with my son, and he had some buddies. My son actually is naturally quite a good shot, and it was really his friends that were struggling. They had no concept of how to shoot, and that's where the idea for ShotKam came up, and worked on it. And it's really kind of a dream come true for me. It started off as obviously a hobby business, and now it's a full-time business. And you know, we sell to 120 countries all over the world. I've got Emily, my daughter. She's the chief operating officer, and my son also works in the business. So it's turned into a dream family business for me.
I can imagine. You told me you got 6 kids, so family obviously means a lot to you. That's for sure.
Yeah, and again, that's one of the great things about America. I mean, I know people, you know, can agonize over, you know, whatever they view as their political problems that we have, but the reality is it's still the best country in the world, and it's got the most. For my 6 children, they've got more opportunity here than they would ever have. And I love Scotland. I mean, I make no mistake about it. I love Scotland, but it's just a lot harder life there. We sometimes think that our freedoms are getting taken away in America, but compared to other countries, we've still got a huge amount of personal freedom.
Oh no, and you and I were talking a little bit before we started this, but I've got 17 going on 18 years in the military, so I've traveled all over the world and seen a lot of different countries and lived in a lot of different places. And America, we can fight with each other and we can do all kinds of stuff. And I'm not trying to turn us to a political podcast, but it's definitely, I would have to say I agree with you. There's definitely no better place to live. God is, if you could be here, God's really blessed you. That's for sure.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
So, but then going in ShotKam. So, like I said, I know you started off with cameras and dots, and the progression to the ShotKam actual product that you have now has just been amazing with the generations and the chip, that same one that iPhone, Apple uses, and it's just a real cool product. Well, some of the things I want to talk to you about though is the masterclass shooting. You was talking about that. How do people take your product and then apply it to become a better shot that you see, other than just cool, hey, yeah, here's me hitting the clay, or here's me hitting the bird? How do you actually take that product and apply it to better yourself? Or how do you see most people?
Yeah, so we all shoot, presumably anyone listening or watching shoots. And when you shoot, you realize how you get to the target is critical. So a lot of novice shooters and a lot of people who watch ShotKam videos for the first time, they say, oh, look at the lead on that, and people are surprised because when you're shooting at big competitions, you end up shooting at targets out to 50 yards, crossing at high speed, and you'll say to someone, how much lead did you give that one, and they'll say, oh, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet. And then you actually look at the video, and if you've got anything, a relative point in the background, you can actually calculate, or you can see the lead in the video. And you've got leads that are, 15, 16, 17 feet, and the clays are breaking, and people are surprised. But if you actually sit down and do the math, that's exactly correct. And that's a big part of what the ShotKam does, is we have perceptions, and what the ShotKam does is show you the reality. So that's kind of fun, and it's a fun thing to do, to look at these huge leads. But that's not the way to become a good shooter. There's an old saying in Scotland that there's 2 things that you should be aware of, but you should never see or never look at. You should be aware of, but you should never look at. That's the lead and the bead. In other words, obviously you never look at the lead, or you never measure the lead, and you don't look at the bead. In other words, you don't look at the gun. So when you're watching a ShotKam video and you've got a reticle, which can either be a crosshair, a rod, or a red dot, whatever you choose, you want to understand how you're achieving how you're moving with the bird. So you'll have the ability to look at a video and say, okay, my perception was I was, holding the gun steady. Let's start with something simple like that. I was holding the gun steady and I called for the bird. And then you look at the video and you see, just as you're calling for the bird, the gun's actually creeping back towards the trap. So that's a novice mistake. You're not going to get to masterclass shooter by moving the gun in the wrong direction before you try and intercept a target going the other way. So that's a simple thing. That's a starting point. And then how do you synchronize with the bird? So how do you moving into the bird? And as we know, there's different techniques you can use to shoot, whether it's probably the three most common or swing through, sustained, or pull away. And how are you achieving that? How do you actually move into that? And then the other thing is understanding how your eyes work. Emily touched on that. The concept that I started with a ShotKam was trying to get a video that felt, if I'm shooting well, the targets look bigger and seem to be slower than they really are. If I'm doing well, if I'm moving well with the clays, that's what I perceive. And so we slow down the video. It's effectively got a zoom effect because of the field of view. So when you look at ShotKam videos, if you make good videos, then you're making good shots. So you're moving with the bird, presumably if it's a crossing bird coming up from typically coming from below the line of the bird to the line of the bird, and then you're synchronizing with it for some length of time. Now, you've probably been out, whether it's clay shooting or out in a duck blind, and you see people shooting and they're going to miss because they're what we would call riding the target. So they see a clay coming from a long way, they mount the gun, they put their cheek on it, they're looking, they're trying to swing with it, and your brain just struggles with that. Your brain doesn't want to have this large object in front of your eye and be completely unaware of it. So when you're looking at your ShotKam videos, you're looking for the mount where you're mounting the gun, the reticle's coming up, it for a brief time is synchronized with the bird. So, and some people can do it. We've got some pro shooters that can, they can be on the bird for a long time, but typically you're going to want to mount into your face, take a shot within half a second of the gun getting into your face. And you can see novice shooters not doing that and missing, and you'll see good shooters. And good shooters are like good golfers or good tennis pros. It looks smooth, it looks relatively slow and unhurried, and all of that shows up in your videos. So yes, you've got are you on the line of the bird? That obviously shows up in the video. Are you lifting your head? The classic, you've shot rabbit targets. There's something about a rabbit target on the ground. I mean, I've watched enough ShotKam videos of people shooting that they will almost always miss high and in front. Now, they miss high and in front, but there's a puff of dust from the ground, which appears to be behind the rabbit because the rabbit has rolled by. So the guy behind says, no, you're behind it. And they just get further and further in front of it. So, but that shows up. You can't, the perception was that you shot behind. You look at the ShotKam video and you go frame by frame, and it's like, no, I shot way in front of it. So that's the kind of stuff that the ShotKam gets you, can help you with. It's also, the ShotKam is obviously I think a great training aid, but it's also good to have either an experienced instructor or just even a really good shot with you, because looking at what your body's doing is also important. Great ShotKam videos are where the reticle moves smoothly on the line of the target, synchronizes, pulls the trigger, breaks the clay, or kills the bird. Behind that is a body that's hopefully moving correctly. I mean, if I'm taking a shot, the relationship between my shoulder and my body, this relationship here has to stay the same. So if you're shooting crossing birds, you're really looking for someone that's synchronized as they turn. You want to be turning from your hips down, basically. So if you're wanting to become a master class shooter, you're going to have to learn both these techniques. You're going to have to be able to look at your videos and understand what went right and what went wrong. And the thing that you'll always struggle with, no matter how long you've been shooting, it's just becoming barrel aware or looking at the lead. So and it just shows up in the ShotKam video. So what happens is, if you take a crossing clay, you move to the target, but then you start checking the lead. You become aware of the lead. Now, people don't actually look at the barrel, or novices may look at the barrel, but most people don't look at the barrel because you actually get double vision, because you would see two targets if you actually focused on the barrel. But people become aware of the lead, and what happens in the ShotKam video is the reticle just slows down. Quite often it goes up as well, but it slows down, goes up, and then you miss. And when you're taking the shot, because this all goes wrong in about less than a quarter of a second. So you'll watch people shoot, and you're like, they were right on it. If they'd only pulled the trigger then, they would have broken the target. But what happens is they're being careful. The top shots in the world will tell you have to shoot carefree, not carefully. So once you start checking leads, then that's when it all goes wrong, and it goes wrong in a very short time. When you've shot, you've used ShotKams, it's just the last few frames of the video is where everything was going great, and then they become lead aware, and it just it all goes wrong in that last quarter of a second.
Yeah, so I learned with me, and like I told your daughter in our podcast, I naturally was a pretty good shotgun shooter, had some natural talent. And then as I transitioned to my marksmanship in the Army with pistols and rifles, and my first focal plane, second focal plane, and it's completely different. And I built great habits for rifle and pistol shooting, but become bad habits for shotgun shooting, and what natural talent I had couldn't compensate for the bad shotgun habits that I had. Trying to aim, even though I wasn't conscious I was doing it. My lead was just all kinds of issues, like you was talking about. Even if I wouldn't aim, I'd come at a kind of a lower rating for good 3-4 seconds before I ever trying to time myself and not let instinct and my brain and my eyes just naturally compensate and do the work for me. And so when I was taking lessons to clean that up, that was the biggest part of it, was just seeing the picture, not drawing until right before I was ready to shoot, following, tracking, and just building all that down. And I cleaned myself up a lot doing that, just the little stuff. And It was neat. Before season, I had the ShotKam on, and I like shooting a lot of different guns. I've really gotten into shooting sub gauges. I hunted most of the season with a 20 gauge and a 28 gauge. And so I like doing that. It's fun, a little more challenging. But so I did a lot of clay shooting and even shooting towers, with that 28 gauge, 20 gauge, and really putting that lead out there, and figuring out and trying to miss in front. Because my problem is, when I shoot, if I miss, I'm behind and low. That's just my natural pull behind. I'll be behind and low, thinking I'm way in front,
right?
But I'm behind and low, no matter which way I swing. And so in my mind, if I try to miss out front, I do better naturally without trying to measure. Just swing through, miss out front. And me, the pull through method, is usually swinging through is what works out best for me most of the time. Now I did notice duck hunting. Now kick back to what I do a lot of times is I'm a big time duck hunter. That's what I live and breathe during hunting season most of the time. Where I start struggling again this year, even after starting to use the ShotKam and taking lessons and doing more sporting clay shooting, is when I have multiple targets. When I have a flock of birds come in, or 3, 4, or 5, and I pick one, or we got a big group of them, it's like I'm going back to not focusing on the target again, being target focused, and I go behind and below the targets again, and I had to go back and clean that. And what's neat about the ShotKam is we get done, I'd be like, well, I shot one, but I should have shot 3. Why didn't I do that? And I would literally cut the Wi-Fi on my gun while it was sitting up, and go back to my phone and watch it and be like, man, I wouldn't even I thought I was on top of it. I wasn't even close. The reticle, I like the red dot reticle, and it would be dead center of the phone, and the bird would be off to the side. Right. And I thought I was ahead of, and so I like being able to get that instant feedback. It wasn't even a frame by frame like when you download it to your computer, but I could still just real quickly go back and watch, be like, okay, I'm nowhere near where I think I am on that bird. So I need to go back and readjust. And I like that during the hunting season part. It was that quick recap, and I could adjust my shooting, and then the next group would come in. Because usually during the daytime in the fields that we hunt in, whatever the ducks are going to do for that day, most of them will all do it. They're going to come in on the south and dip in right in front of you and come in. That's usually what all of them will do that day. And right. The next day it might be something different. But after we get those first 1 or 2 in, I could kind of think, all right, so if that happens again, this is what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, no, I know that I deal with duck hunting. Most of my duck hunting is in Florida, but yeah, once you establish the pattern, then you can kind of prepare yourself. And the nice thing with the ShotKam is that live, or that Wi-Fi, where you can download it to your phone and actually look at it out in the field and get a feel for what's going wrong. And then, you're shooting, behind and below. As you shoot more and more, and you've obviously shot a lot of live birds, but as you shoot more and more, you start to understand what causes that, and the relationship between your eyes, your brain, and your gun, and understanding what your eyes focused on, and which part it's actually, technically it's, your eye has various levels of clarity or resolution, if you like. So the middle of you've got an area in your retina that's got extremely high resolution. It's a very small area. When you're looking at a target 20 yards away, your maximum resolution, that central part of your eye, is equivalent to about 3 or 4 feet across. So that's not a lot. So that's almost like, if you're shooting a mallard, that's almost like the whole mallard is. And if you're going to shoot well, you have to have that to get the maximum speed, distance, and line information to your brain. You have to be using that part of your actual retina. And then you realize that your brain is doing a lot with that information. Again, a lot of people know they've got a blind spot. Well, yeah. When you're looking out, into the sky at, ducks, with cupped wings coming in, you're not aware of a blind spot, but there is a blind spot. And, for people at home, if you look in a computer and you look at the top left-hand corner of your computer screen and move the mouse, somewhere around about the middle of it depends how big your screen is, but you're going to find a point where you actually can't see the mouse. You're moving the mouse, but you can't see it. But you're like, I'm unaware of that. Well, that's because your brain fills that in. So your brain is filling in all this information, and it's what we also talked about, how your brain starts to, if you're focused on a target, it actually excludes a lot of your peripheral vision, your actual vision. If you actually hold up your hands, most people can go beyond 180 degrees with 2 eyes open. You can go beyond 180 degrees, but when you're shooting well, your brain is just narrowing it down to a very small field of view, and understanding how your eyes work is going to be critical to becoming a masterclass shooter. You talk to the top shots in the world, and when they say look at the target, and people say, well, I am looking at the target. They're saying, you don't understand what I mean when I say look at the target. I mean, look at the target where you're seeing, the lines on a clay, seeing the dimples on the clay. One of the guys at our club, Virgil, he did an experiment. He's an instructor, and he took a Sharpie and he marked the middle of the clay with about a dime-sized black spot, and then he would throw chandelles and a chandelle is a clay where it's kind of arcing through the sky with the face towards you. It can be either way, but he was throwing them with the face, the dome towards the shooter, and basically the good shots, instantly saw that there was a black spot in the middle of it. And the average or not good shots never saw that. So, who's looking hard at the clay? The harder you look at the clay, the better shot you're going to be. And understanding that and then incorporating when you're watching a ShotKam video, again, when you watch a ShotKam video, it's really good fun to watch, ducks getting pillowcased and all the rest of it. But if you're actually wanting to become a better shot, when you watch the video, you look at the clay. You don't look at the reticle. You look at the clay. And we have a gentleman, Gil Ash, who's done a lot of, he spent his whole life teaching people how to shoot shotguns. And he did an experiment. He's got a large base of clients. He did an experiment where he got them to watch ShotKam videos. And he told them how to watch a ShotKam video. So don't look at the reticle, just look at the clay, and your brain is aware of where the reticle is, just like your brain is aware of where the gun is. So look hard at it. He got them to look at 100 ShotKam videos that he'd taken of himself shooting, so doing it correctly. And he found that his customers, without pulling the trigger, just they watched 100 ShotKam videos and they went out, and they were typically shooting 15% better scores, just because, their brain had subconsciously got the idea of, okay, I look hard at the target and the gun or the reticle is somewhere out here. And you're talking about shooting tower birds. When you start breaking these really high, long tower birds, you have the feeling that the gun is pointing, a mile out here, and you're looking at the target, and lo and behold, the target explodes in the air. So it's getting comfortable with that, getting to the point where your brain is comfortable with that, because your brain, when you start shooting, it doesn't want to do that. Your brain is like, no, I want the gun to be fairly closely related to the target, and it's not comfortable having, the gun effectively shooting 10 feet in front of a target. So watching the videos, practicing is the key. I have to ask you, when you're shooting ducks, I mean, I shoot ducks typically most of the time with 12 gauge, and I know the sub gauges are becoming more popular, but I'm shooting, 12 gauge, 1.125" steel. Are you shooting? What are you shooting to your 28 gauge? Is it some heavy metal?
Yeah, so I've used, and I'm doing a review this year, and we'll come to it, in a podcast later on. But I did what I call the no still shot challenge this year. Well, I duck hunted all season or waterfowl hunted with 0 still shot and 0 blend. I chose 2 brands, Heavy Shot and Heavy Metal, Heavy Shot and Emboss. Those are 2 brands I use. I've done a podcast with both those, Scott Turner and Lee Chose, and I strictly use those two shells. And for prime example, on the Heavy Shot, which is the old version of Heavy 12, which is the highest TSS density that they have. When I say blends, of course, all TSS, is a blend when they smelt it together. Right. But no blend is like part tungsten, part steel, as far as multiple BBs together. And I got ShotKam footage. Actually, my first hunt with the ShotKam. I have one of the new bred A300 Ultimas I was doing a review on. Put the ShotKam on, and I speckle belly hunt, which is a good size geese. With that 20 gauge shooting number 6 shot, the Heavy 12. And right. I mean, if you made connection with them, it just drop them right out of the sky. With my 28 gauge, I use the heavy 12 quite a bit, and I like the Boss, the 3.5 blend. So it's a 3 and 5 shot mixed together,
Right.
and 2 and 3/4, 1
Right.
ounce, 1 ounce loads, and
Yeah,
it
that's
just
awesome.
it just
I heard,
cripples them.
I heard, you know, I haven't shot that. I'm interested to try it. But I heard someone talking about shooting turkeys with, you know, heavy metal.
Tungsten, yeah.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I mean, that's unusual. You know, shooting a turkey with a 410. I mean, you know, seems like 5-10 years ago we're jamming as many pellets into a 3.5 shell as we could, and you know,
3.5 inch 10 gauge.
yeah. Well, interestingly, it's not legal here, but I brought it over with me from Scotland. I have an 8 gauge double barreled shotgun. It was built in 1895.
Yeah.
It's a hammer gun, but it's an 8 gauge, and it can throw 3 ounces of lead up there. So it's a good goose gun. But you can only fire it. If I fire it more than about 10 or 12 times, it just gives me a terrible headache.
I can imagine. So I like I did a podcast, and I'm going to post it here soon with James Carter of TGS Outdoors, and he and I kind of built a relationship together, and then he gets his hand on all those older guns and punt guns, and seeing the 8 gauges that he can come up with and the 6 gauges, even if it's just reviewing, those are neat. And you know, when they used to mount them on the boats, you know, and you know,
oh yeah, the punt gun, yeah. They were 4 gauge and 2 gauge, and
yeah. So that'd be neat. But even on that 28 gauge you talked to me about earlier, I got some friends of mine that run a pretty big duck club, or private duck club in Arkansas. They went 4 years where their whole club shot nothing but 410s duck hunt. You know,
wow.
Yeah. I mean, and they shoot 410s and 28s almost every day of the season.
Yeah.
Somebody bring, you know, sometimes there's a 20 gauge. If anybody has the audacity to bust out a 16 gauge, it's here we got, you know, big shot. So I think with the advancement in the shot, right? You know, we're even still shots a lot better than it was when it first come out.
Sure, yeah.
So the advancement in the shot, the advancement in you know, letting ducks come in, not shooting them at 60 yards. You know,
right.
I'm pretty dead on at 40 yards on my 28 gauge in a full choke. I mean, pretty dead on. And letting them come in and work, and the shooting. And talking about the guy in the club, most of those guys are 60 and 70 years old, and they're one pull trigger killers. Every time they pull a trigger, they drop a bird. I mean, and they just, and saying they're drinking coffee, eating biscuit. Oh, here comes a bird with a biscuit in the mouth. Boom, you know, send the dog.
Dead bird. Yeah.
And they do it with 410s, 28 gauges all the time. I've watched them do it, and I get a little antsy, you know, watching them, because I feel like, you know, if I'm ever a guest hunting with them, I'm like, all right, so I got to not do the right thing or do the wrong thing. And I whiffed on one so big, they called me out on one of them this past season. I had that 20 gauge of mine, and there's, he brought the big gun, you know, 20 gauge. And we had one come right over the blind, and I stuck my head out and whiffed on it, and you'd have thought I sunk the Titanic. It was, I can't believe wow, we should have gave you a slingshot, you know. And it's all in good fun, but man, it was whiffing on them.
Yeah,
but you brought
good entertainment for them, yeah.
Oh yeah, and I got pretty thick skin, so it don't matter to me.
Yeah.
But you brought up a good point earlier about the focus, and I can only speak to my experience, but to me, that's my big problem. Is I see the picture, I don't focus on that point. I don't focus on the duck's beak. I don't focus on, you know, the feet. I see the big picture, and for me, it's kind of counter programming. Like I said before, I spent so much time shooting pistols and rifles, and in the military, we do what's called, you know, threat awareness. You don't want that focus, because if you focus on this one target, what comes in from the sides will get you. So I mean, we do drills where you're shooting rounds, you know, or shooting rounds, and you got guys behind you holding fingers up, 2s and 1s and 4s, and you got to be able to hit your targets and then be able to tell them what finger they just hold up beside you, you know. And so I've spent so much time keeping my, you know, peripheral vision open and having good threat awareness while I'm shooting, that it's really, I have to really make myself focus on the target I'm shooting. And my brother and sister, Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, just they couldn't be more opposite. I mean, you're holding up a pistol and you're staring at the front sight. You know, that has
Yeah.
to be your your focal point. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
you have to be conscious. You know, full 180 degrees around you. I mean, it's the antithesis of what we're doing with shotgunning. When you're shooting a shotgun, you should have the feeling of you're out there. You know, you are out there. You should be unaware of the gun. You should be unaware of everything here. You should have a narrow focus, and it should be out there, and it should be on the target.
Yeah, my brother and sister, I'm 34, my brother's 20, and my sister's 18, and they grew up shooting. When I was in high school, we didn't have it, but they grew up shooting in the 4-H collegiate, and they've gone to the Grand every year. They both won in Class D for a long time. My brother won in Class C this past year before he went off to basic training.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the only shooting they've ever done. And both of them can just, and you take my brother duck hunting, it's silly the shots that he'll make, and we call him the cleanup guy. And he's in basic training right now. He joined the Guard also, so I'm interested to see how his shotgun shooting changes, or if it does when he gets back. And will he have to go back and do like what I did and clean? Because he's definitely done a lot more. And my sister, she's a great shot also. But they've definitely done a lot more shooting. They shoot a lot of 5-stand, a lot of skeet, a lot of trap, and they go up the Grand there in Missouri or the one in Tucson and try around. So I'm interested to see how his shot pattern changes when he gets back.
Yeah, and a lot of it is to comfortably move between those two disciplines. I mean, obviously you're still in the Guard, so you still have to have that, and it's just a comfort level. You look at good shots and they're comfortable doing what I'm describing, which is they're mentally, they're out there, they've got a narrow field of view, they're looking hard at the target. Going between that and what you're doing, I think, is very achievable, but you have to have practiced it enough. I mean, and right now you're probably doing more Guard work than hunting, although you've probably done a fair amount of duck hunting this past season.
I tried to do more hunting than anything. If I could have one choice, I would just live in the marsh all day long.
Yeah. You and me both. I love it. We've got the Everglades out here, which slightly off topic. I mean, people think hunting's not great in Florida, and for sure the deer hunting is not great. At least in South Florida, it's not great. We've got pigs, but they don't taste very good, so you end up not shooting a lot of those. But what we've got excellent duck hunting. It really is. We go out in the Everglades. I've got a boat with a mud motor, and you've got 2 million acres, and you can get out there and you can be miles and miles from anyone around you, and it's that's my favorite thing in life to do is do that.
Y'all got a lot of cinnamon teal down there? Y'all get a teal migration pretty early?
So we're predominantly blue wing. We get a small amount of green wing. Green wing is my son. I've got a 22-year-old son. That's his favorite duck. He gets excited when he sees green wing teal. And we get a few cinnamon, but honestly, 95% plus are blue wing teal. Out in the Everglades, we've got different areas here. The Everglades typically is more diver ducks, ringers, and then we've got the sort of unusual Florida ducks. We've got the mottled duck.
Yeah, the mottled duck.
Yeah, we've got the mottled duck, which for people that don't know is basically, both the male and female look like female mallards. So we've got mottled ducks down here, and we're kind of blessed. We've got black belly wood ducks, black belly whistling ducks that are just, the numbers are growing and growing because of the agriculture down here. So we have a lot of people that like to come down to Florida and shoot those, and also fulvous ducks, which are hard to get anywhere else. So we've actually got quite a lot of northern duck hunters that come down here just because they want to get a fulvous, they want to get a mottled, they want to get a black belly, and overall the duck hunting here really is excellent.
talking about teal, you wouldn't think so, but I have an easier time when I'm duck hunting. I'm more apt to hit a teal when I shoot at it than I am a mallard, because the speed, teal's faster, right? And just instinctively, I don't have time to overthink or anything. When a teal comes in, there's a bird, draw up, swing through, pull the trigger, drop the bird. Where when I got mallards coming in for 10 minutes, just floating and spinning, there's too much I can go wrong with in my head. And then I'm, it's smaller, half the size. I'll drop a teal a whole lot quicker than I will a mallard or some kind of puddle duck like that. Just because
and you may see that in your clay shooting as well. You take masterclass shooters, a lot of them, including me, hate clay that's coming in from 40, 50 yards away, and it's just coming in and floating and floating and floating. And in the X and Y axis, it's really not moving, quickly at all. But you see it for so long, you get tempted to mount the gun early, and then you're making that classic mistake of, what we call riding the target. And it's the same thing. You see a duck. Teal, people, at least in Florida anyway, we talk about, well, the wind is coming from this direction, and the sun is there, and the ducks are going to come in, and yes, that works. I mean, if you're lucky enough to get a mottled or a pintail or a widgeon or whatever, that's going to work. Teal just arrive. They're just there all of a sudden, and they're fast, and they're just there. So you don't have time to do any of that, riding nonsense, and you just have to shoot instinctively. And clearly you've got, clearly you've got natural talent. And there's a lot of people, both with clays and with ducks, when they just don't have time, they're just relying on pure instinct, they actually shoot better.
So how does the program, you mentioned masterclass quite a bit, how does the program work where you say that ShotKam can link you up with the pro, is that right? And can get you to masterclass in about 2 years?
Well, there's no guarantees on that.
Oh,
so it took, so I personally wanted to see how quickly I could get to masterclass without using an instructor. So I did it, and it took me 3 years. I wouldn't recommend that. I mean, it's better to do both. So if you match up with an instructor, it's going to speed you up. So a good instructor, a ShotKam, and practice, you've got some great shots that can do it, in a year or whatever. But the average person is going to take probably 4 or 5 years to get there. And be careful what you wish for, because it's a lot of fun. Your brother and your sister, it's a lot of fun. You win in E class, and then you win in C class, and then you win in B class, and then you get to master class and you never win again. Because
you're just paying dues and buying shells.
You're just throwing money in the pot, because and quite seriously, it's one of the issues that sporting clays have, is if you're a golfer, you can be a good golfer, you can be a 1 handicap, 2 handicap, but a 1 handicap golfer is going to it just can't compete with, the Tiger Woods of the world, or, the top golfers of today. And it's the same in when it comes to masterclass shooting. There is a big leap between, young Joe Finizzi, he's a Florida boy that's a phenom. I mean, I don't know how old Joe is now. He's probably 19 or 20, but he's probably now one of the best shooters in the world. And because he's down here, you get to shoot with him. When we get to shoot with all of it. I mean, I actually just shot with Bill McGuire, who's just one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. I just shot with him at the local tournament, and you realize that there's a big difference between professional shooters and the average masterclass shooter. It's a big leap. Yeah. It really is. If it was possible, it would be good to actually have a different class, but I'm not sure how you can make that work.
As the sport seems to grow, and maybe all these high school and collegiate teams doing that, maybe it'll just grow to the point where it just has to have another class out of necessity, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if we could have some professional class and somehow make that work, I think it'd be better for everyone, but I've not really had a good idea of how to do that.
Well, one thing we could talk about, and so when I did the last podcast with your daughter, Emily, it was in preparation for the Black Friday sale, which has been the ShotKam's big sale of the year that ShotKam always does. And so we done that, and it was a huge success to the point where the Christmas sale y'all had planned, y'all didn't even have enough inventory to do the Christmas
we
sale.
sold everything. We sold everything that wasn't nailed down. So we sold everything that wasn't nailed down. So we basically canceled the Christmas sale, and then we've been working. We're building our infrastructure, whether that's digital marketing, new warehouse, building up our supply chain from vendors. So we've been working on that because we've been growing at over 50% every year for the last several years. So it's a demand on the personnel as well, hiring good people. We make a total commitment to only hire people that have got integrity and are focused on the customer. I mean, and Emily does most of the hiring, and she only wants people that love the customer, love the product, and just want to make sure everyone's happy with their product. So, but we've been growing, and so we've gone into our Valentine's Day sale now. So that's again been very successful. So if you want to buy your Valentine at ShotKam, now is a good time to do it.
Yeah, so this is the second sale, so it'll be the first sale this year, and probably the only one until Black Friday again, if I had to guess, if y'all still decide to do that. But so what is it, $100 off a regular ShotKam?
It's $100 off, and we're still at the point we've got plenty. We've built up our inventory, so Emily's and the team do a great job. You place an order today, it ships tomorrow. You get it 2 days later. In the US, it's free second day FedEx delivery. We've built up we've actually built a good relationship with Federal Express. We're now big enough that they actually treat us quite well, and we can deliver. I mean, people get shocked. They order a ShotKam in London, today, and then today's Wednesday. They receive it on Friday, and they're shocked that it came from America. But we've got a very fast international delivery system, and we take payment in local currency. So if you're in London, you're going to pay in British pounds. All of the customs and VAT and all that stuff that can be a hassle is all taken care of. We do a good job, so there's no surprises, and you get the product very quickly. And Emily's done a great job building that infrastructure.
Yeah, and y'all got a pretty big international market. I mean, and employees, and y'all have a big international employee base too, for y'all size of company. So y'all definitely are spread out and can take care of people, to people who, if anybody has the capability to shoot shotguns and do this kind of stuff, then you can pretty much get a ShotKam to them.
No, we do a lot of international business, and it's fun sometimes. Either through the trade-in program or whatever, we'll get, or someone, occasionally we get a defective product and we're very good. We'll swap it out and give people a brand new replacement. But sometimes we get units back from places where some of the videos on there, there's people in the Middle East shooting songbirds and stuff like that we wouldn't do. But it's just whatever the local culture supports.
So I asked Emily the same question. I asked you, what's the craziest thing that you could tell us, that you've seen somebody use a ShotKam for, or the footage that they've had one on there?
Well, we've had some. We're in Florida, so we've had some people put them on bang sticks. So the rules when you're going alligator hunting in Florida, you have to control the alligator on a rope. So the way you do that is well, there's two common ways. You can use a snatch hook on a fishing line. The way I do it, because I enjoy alligator hunting, so the way I do it is kind of old school. We typically save a duck from duck season. We wait until it's pretty ripe, so put it out in the sun for 3 or 4 days, and then we tie a wooden peg to it, a 1 inch diameter, 2 inch long wooden peg, and then you put that out. Obviously, alligator picks up the scent and swallows the duck, and the wooden peg gets caught. It's got a gullet that's designed to allow large prey like a small deer or whatever. It goes through the gullet, and the gullet closes so it doesn't regurgitate the deer. So anyway, the wooden peg gets caught behind the gullet, and you just kind of tease it in. You can only maybe put 1 or 2 pounds of pressure on a fishing line, but the alligator doesn't know what's going on. And then you harpoon it. Now, when you harpoon it, it knows what's going on. The first time I did it, I was with my friend, and we're out in a canoe. So we're out in a 2-man canoe, and we harpoon a 10-foot gator, and we're getting pulled along through the cattails. It was like Moby Dick, we're getting pulled along with this alligator. Boy from Scotland. It was pretty crazy. Anyway, once you've got it harpooned, you get it up close to the boat, and so we're not allowed to shoot it with a rifle. Some places you can, Louisiana, you can shoot it with a rifle.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to do that. So we have something called a bang stick, which sometimes divers use them for shark protection. But the way we do it is you place the bang stick on the gator's head, and then if you bump it onto the gator's head, typically a 44 caliber bullet will go off and kill the gator. But anyway, you can actually attach a ShotKam onto that and film the whole thing on the ShotKam. So that's about the strangest thing that I've seen the ShotKam used for, is alligator hunting with a bang stick.
That's pretty neat. Now, we're kind of getting close on time here, so I won't take too much of your time. But since you're a duck hunter, I always like to ask on my duck hunters. You may have a special Scottish version, but what's your favorite way to prepare duck, to cook it? If you're gonna eat duck, how do you typically do it?
Well, I mean, there's our ducks quite gamey. I mean, obviously, if you're shooting diver ducks like ringers or whatever, they're quite gamey. So, we have a lot of recipes that are, versions of bacon. We've got some of those well-known recipes where cook it in bacon, put it on your plate and throw away the ringer and eat the bacon.
Eat the plate of bacon.
But probably my favorite way to cook it is to layer it in a cooking tray. Put a layer of duck and then a layer of Swiss cheese and a layer of ham, and as you know, there's not a lot of oil or fat in the duck breast, but the Swiss cheese and the ham keep it moist. And then just bake it in the oven until stick a temperature probe in it. Wait till it gets up to sort of 135 or so, and that's my favorite way to cook it.
To be honest with you, that's the first time I've ever heard that kind of recipe. So
it's probably a little bit Scottish, We eat haggis in Scotland, so
Oh yeah. I did when I was going to the border. I got interested in killing time, so I did all the ancestry stuff, and a good part of my lineage comes from Scotland. So I've always wanted to go there, and see the Highlands and do all that kind of stuff. And I just, I thought it'd be cool. So I figured you'd have some kind of special plate or special dish you'd serve with duck.
Yeah. Well, the next time you do a podcast, you'll need to put your kilt on.
Put my kilt on? So there is one you can wear in your Army uniform. Friend of mine. He wears one in his dress uniform.
No, and obviously then in the British Army, there's Scottish regiments that still wear kilt.
Yeah, you go out there and shoot, trap, and skeet with your kilt on in the middle of summertime in the Everglades?
No, I don't. I just keep it. I just keep it for weddings and funerals now.
No, special events. Well, David, hey man, I appreciate your time, bud. We'd like to. Have you ever hunted in Arkansas before or Alabama?
I have not, and I've got lots of friends that have, and just rave about it. So if I get out there, I'll definitely look you up.
Yeah, man, you got an open invitation anytime. Anytime I'm out there, you can come hunting with us. So
I appreciate that, Kenny, and vice versa. I mean, again, a lot of people don't think of Florida as good duck hunting, but it's a lot better than you might expect. So, and especially, we're in February. Your duck season is over. So if you want to come down and get some nice warm weather here, I mean, our duck season's over as well. But come down here and we'll go and shoot some clays from towers that are 50 yards away.
All right, Dave. Well, hey, I appreciate it, buddy.
All right. Thanks, Kenny. Bye-bye.